Today I want to talk about the solenoid on a starter, and here's our solenoid. Solenoids get a bad rap sometimes because they get called, well, sometimes we call this a solenoid, and this is not a solenoid, this is a magnetic switch. It's a relay, and it's no different than this relay. Whoop, there it goes. They might be different, that one used to work. So this one carries a certain amount of amperage, as well as the Bosch one will carry a certain amount of amperage. Now, the relay and the solenoid are similar in the fact that they both use a magnetic field to pull in a contact to make contact between two posts. So if we look at this starter solenoid here, we can see that we've got the two posts. One here, this is your motor terminal, and this is your power in. So we could actually hook up a battery to this post here, and if we put a signal in, it will excite a magnetic field that will pull the contacts in, like a relay. But at the same time, it will pull an armature in, engaging the starter back here. So a relay makes contact between these two points. That's all it does. One of these is a ground, one of them is a signal. So when we give it a signal, it makes a magnetic field in here that excites a disc, and it pulls the disc down and makes contact between these two posts. And if this was the battery, this could go to another implement that would get power down. Again, we can turn it off. When we take away the signal, it shuts down. The solenoid here is going to do the same thing, make contact between the battery post and the motor terminal, and supply power to turn the starter over. At the same time, there's an armature on the back, which makes it a solenoid, because solenoids do work. They have an arm and they do work. So it's going to pull that armature back, and that's going to engage the pinion in the flywheel. The motor will start to turn, and hopefully the engine starts. So these are all the contacts to make that happen. So we can simply, in fact, we're going to do it. I'm going to grab some jumper cables, and we're going to hook up our battery to this starter. And I'll show you how this works. So make sure I get this right. There's our we're going to leave that one. We're not going to connect that one. So we're going to connect to the battery terminal. Now this is a ground terminal. This is a very large starter, and hopefully it doesn't fly off the bench when we get going here. So now it is hooked up. Okay, so now it just needs a signal. And if we give it a signal, it will create a magnetic field in here, pulling the disc in, at the same time pushing the armature out, and that will cause the starter motor to start to turn. So this is the signal here, and I'm going to touch it to the power and see if it works. I'm just going to try to hang on. So we can hear the solenoid coming out, and we can hear the motor now turning. And hopefully the starter starts. Now, often, we'll disconnect this, often we confuse some of the problems with starters to solenoids. So a simple way to diagnose if it's a starter or a solenoid is to isolate the two. So we can't isolate the starter right now without taking off this connection to the motor terminal. But if I was to undo this bolt, or this nut and this nut, I could isolate the solenoid. But we know the solenoid works because, and this is indicative of a solenoid, the clicking noises you hear. So as soon as you hear that clicking noise, you know the starter is, and what that is it's the pulling the armature in. So we know we're getting contact, and if I held it longer, you can hear the motor terminal going. So let's say that didn't happen. We didn't hear that clicking noise, and we questioned if it's working. Well, simply, let's bypass the solenoid and touch the motor terminal. So now we have the motor terminal turning, and not the solenoid engaging, saying the motor is working properly. We know the solenoid's working properly. This is a good starter.